Hello. Have we begun? I was expecting
Yes.
speaker. Okay, hello and welcome to Leading the Way, Women Leaders in Post-Secondary Education. My name is Nargis Nurmbala and I'm your MC today. I want to start by acknowledging that I'm joining you from the unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples. Today's event takes place in unprecedented times. I mean, we're joining you from Zoom, from all over the world, which is so exciting. Our post-secondary institutions and students are facing challenges and obstacles like never before, and they're having to lead through adversity and change. We have assembled an amazing international panel of women leaders of post-secondary institutions. In fact, I was joking with our moderator that I'm one of the only people here today without a PhD. So it's a little bit intimidating. We're going to be having a mindful and thoughtful conversation led by my friend Shobna. And I want to say something. This is by no means an exhaustive panel. There are so many other women leading post-secondary institutions. Everyone could not be here today, but we are standing on each other's shoulders, lifting each other higher. So I wanted to say that because there's so many others. Now, some housekeeping quickly, because I know they're going to kill me if I don't say this. So please use the chat function. If you have a technical question, we have technical people ready to help you if you do have a technical issue. Chat function for the technical questions. Q&A function for questions to the panel. Shobna will be monitoring that. Q&A is also good if you want to make a comment about the event and tell us how amazing it is. So chat function, technical questions, Q&A for actual event questions and comments. Now, I'd like to introduce an amazing woman to you. Her name is Elizabeth Brynn. She is an international education champion and Associate Director, Stakeholder Engagement of the BC Council for International Education. Elizabeth, if you're here, it's over to you.
Thank you, Nargis. I would also like to acknowledge that I live and work on the unceded traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh Nations. BCCIE is a Crown corporation funded by the Ministry of Advanced Education and Skills Training and supports the internationalization efforts of language, K-12, and post-secondary institutions in BC. And we, along with the BC India Business Network, are pleased to support this engaging panel of global experts in higher education. I would like to extend my gratitude to everyone who has taken the time to be here today, to the participants and to the speakers, two of whom are calling in from India. My thoughts are with you and your communities at home. The multitude of challenges we have faced over the last year have shifted the landscape of higher education, altering our paths forward and teaching us valuable lessons about the work we do as educators. We have learned just how important post-secondary institutions are and can be, not just as places of learning, but also as spaces of support, opportunity, and community for students, faculty, and staff. We've been reminded of how critical institutions are to innovation and creativity, and as foundational building blocks for creating a better, more sustainable, equitable, and civically conscious future. With geography becoming almost irrelevant in a digital world, we've learned that not all education needs to be conducted in the four walls of a classroom. A year of Zoom calls and classes, as exhausting as it might sometimes be, can also bring us together in new and exciting ways, while providing access to those denied by previous systems. This past year has also placed a spotlight on the importance of patience, connection, and privilege. It has taught us how fragile our way of life can be, but also how truly resilient we are. Today's speakers are at the forefront of this change. These global leaders remind us of the important role that women play in higher education and how when their voices are heard and they are supported, we are able to embrace new ways of thinking and learning, not just in our institutions, but in every aspect of our lives. At this time, I would like to thank all of our partners for supporting this event. Thank you, YVR, Air Canada, ICICI Bank. I would also like to thank our global media partner, PIO TV, and our participating institutions, Emily Carr University of Art and Design, Rye Technology University, Simon Fraser University, University of the Fraser Valley, and Tata Institute of Social Sciences. Without all of your generous support, this wouldn't be possible. And finally, I would like to acknowledge the special guests in attendance today. Mr. Manish, Consul General of India in Vancouver, Mr. Sandeep Goel, President and CEO of ICICI Bank Canada, Mr. James Howie, Manager Business Development Air Canada, and Mr. Munish Gupta, Chairman of PIO TV. Thank you all for being part of this exciting event. Nargis, over to you.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Now it gives me great pleasure to introduce you to our moderator today, my friend Shobna J.R. Madhavan, Associate Vice President of External Relations for Simon Fraser University. Shobna, it's over to you.
Thank you very much, Nargis, and a warm welcome to all of you. These are indeed unprecedented times, and it's an honor to be your moderator for this morning. We are going to be with 5 amazing leaders. I've met every single one of them and continue to be inspired by their journey, their leadership, compassion, and passion. It's my pleasure to introduce our panelists. Dr. Gillian Siddall, President and Vice Chancellor, Emily Carr University, Canada. Dr. Harbeen Arora, Chancellor, Rye University, India. Dr. Joanne McLean, President and Vice Chancellor, University of Fraser Valley, Canada. Dr. Joy Johnson, President and Vice Chancellor, Simon Fraser University, Canada. And last but not the least, one of my favorite professors, and the Vice Chancellor of Tata Institute of Social Sciences, India, Dr. Shalini Bharat. A warm welcome. Before we get started with our panel discussion and a very rich, meaningful, and thoughtful conversation, I would like to invite our panelists, starting off with Dr. Arora, to take a minute to tell us a little bit about your organization.
Thank you so much, Shobna. Thank you for the opportunity to go first. So namaste, everybody. Thank you for your warm wishes and words for India. Truly, Canada is such a wonderful country, and just the opening remarks were so heartening. So thank you, everybody. Truly, we stand together. So my institution that I represent today, the Rai University, the Rai Technology University, these are institutions of higher education. These are private universities legislated in different states of India. To take the Rai University, that has been legislated by an act of the state government when our Honorable Prime Minister was the Chief Minister of that state. And right away, what we wanted to do was really bring the girls, because the focus was always philanthropic and to serve the students, rural youth in the underserved regions, especially young women. So our very first batches, we started by giving out a lot of scholarships to young women in villages who traditionally would have never visited or got enrolled into higher education for various reasons. But by that, we started a scholarship scheme called the Dream Scholarship, because it meant you could just go out and dream and chase your dreams. And we had about 250 young women who benefited, and it was not just then open to underserved sections of society in India, but we attracted young women from all over the world, from different countries. It became a very successful program and was mentioned in the State Assembly by the then Chief Minister and now Prime Minister, Honorable Shri Modi. And we continue to do a little bit, and I still truly to date that whatever we achieved with that has been remarkable, because in the regions that we served that time, the rural regions, to get the kind of enrollment that we found because of the scholarships is truly a case study in itself. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Arora. Over to Dr. Bharat.
Yeah, namaste once again, and thank you for including me in this very distinguished panel. The Tata Institute of Social Sciences is India's premier community-engaged social science university, offering over 100 multidisciplinary undergraduate, postgraduate, doctoral, vocational, and continuing study programs from its 4 campuses. It was established in 1936 by the visionaries from the Tata Group, and the vision was for creating a people-centered, equitable, just society. The Institute is a pioneer in the country in creating and perfecting a unique pedagogy that blends classroom teaching with field-based learning in actual settings, such as in rural and urban settings, government institutions, civil society organizations, the industry, and the corporate world. And such early exposure to the external world while learning on real-time basis is what gives our graduates a distinct edge over their peer. The Institute is also widely credited for its field action projects developed and led by faculty and sometimes by students as well. And these FAPs, as we call them, work for vulnerable and marginalized groups and on very many social issues, and bring back field learnings from the fields to the classrooms. Many of these FAPs have been game changers and key to policy reforms and innovative programs in the country. And currently, the Institute has 18 such dynamic and vibrant FAPs in action across many Indian states. The Institute has several active academic and research partnerships with international universities, including one with SFU, as Dr. Joy said. We are very happy about it, and we are partners on many consortia as well. And we have a very vibrant, customized Study in India program for international students interested in learning about community engagement and field-based methodologies. So much for this moment, and over to you, Sobna.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bharat. Dr. Sidel.
Thank you so much, and good morning and good evening, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here. I want to thank all those who organized this panel, and to say what an honor it is to be on this panel with other distinguished guests. Emily Carr University of Art and Design is located on the unceded and traditional territory of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples, and we are always grateful to our host nations for being able to work together on that land. We have a long history in Vancouver at Emily Carr. We are celebrating our 100th anniversary in 4 years. And as we mark that major milestone, we will be looking at ways to remember our past and look ahead to our exciting future. In 2017, we moved into our beautiful new purpose-built campus at Great Northern Way. We offer a range of undergraduate and graduate programs in visual art, design, and media. We are one of 4 art and design universities in Canada and one of the largest in North America with approximately 2,000 full-time equivalent students. And if I can just brag for a moment about Emily Carr, in the QS International rankings in the category of universities that deliver art and design programming, and there are over 200 internationally, we are ranked number 30 and the only Canadian university ranked in the top 50 for delivery of art and design. So we're very proud of that. Thank you. I think I'll leave it there. We're also involved in many partnerships, including with Simon Fraser and University of British Columbia, looking forward to our conversation today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Siddall. Dr. McLean.
Yes, hi everyone. What a pleasure it is to be here. What an honor to be amongst all of you and to have this opportunity. Thank you. A little bit about the University of the Fraser Valley. We are an institution that is here in British Columbia and also with a presence in Chandigarh in India. We are a distributed campus model. So we're 75, 80 kilometers due east of Vancouver in BC. And here we have four campuses and other areas where we're delivering education. We are an undergraduate, regionally based institution with a dispersed kind of delivery of education through undergraduate degrees and some master's degrees, but also through certificates and diplomas and even trades programming. We have about few more than 15,000 students, of which when you add them all up into the full-time equivalents, we're around 10,000. And we're a relatively young institution. We're only coming up to halfway to where Gillian's institution is. We will have our 50th anniversary coming in 2024 that we're preparing for. We have for many years, since 2004, been involved in delivering education in Chandigarh with UIGE and an attachment to delivering business education and partnership there with a variety of institutions and colleges. And our institution is working through all that everyone is right now. And what a pleasure it is for me to have an opportunity to chat with you this morning.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. McLean. And last but not the least, Dr. Johnson.
Well, thank you very much, Shobana, and greetings, everyone. Again, such an honor to be here today with such fantastic colleagues. Simon Fraser University is very privileged to be located on unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Coquitlam people on Burnaby Mountain. And that's where I'm coming to you from today. We have 3 campuses, one in downtown Vancouver, one on Burnaby Mountain, and one in the city of Surrey. These are vibrant campuses. We have 37,000 students. We are considered Canada's top comprehensive university, and we're very proud of that record. Our vision is to be an engaged university. And I think there's a common theme today in terms of thinking about ways we can work with our communities, make a difference in the world. We value our partnerships, and some of them have been mentioned already, because we recognize that the pressing issues of today really require that we work together, that we find common cause and really put our efforts into creating meaningful learning opportunities, but also address pressing issues of the day through our research. We have 170,000 alumni across 143 countries. So we are scattered across the world. And we're very, very interested at this time in terms of our global engagement to be thinking deeply about sustainability, about ways that we in partnership again can address key issues for the globe. So with that, I think I'll leave it. I'm looking forward to our conversation and back to you, Shobana.
Thank you so much, Dr. Johnson. So let's just jump in right into the conversation. I'm sure our global audience, very much like me, is looking forward to this conversation, to your insights and reflections. I'd like to get started with Dr. Bharat. This is an incredibly tough time, I'm sure, in your career, and with the pandemic's second wave in India, which has been very devastating. These are tough times. So as a leader, Dr. Bharat, how are you approaching this difficult time? And what are your current priorities at TISS?
Certainly, Sobhana, as you said, that this is a very, very tough time. And with the second wave, it's become even more tough for us. I should say that as a university leader at this point in time, I think addressing the high levels of anxieties and uncertainties and despair being expressed through mails and during virtual meetings by our students, as well as sometimes our faculty, I think is most certainly high on my priority. It's a challenge to continue with academics when the pandemic is raging around us. The difficulty is in balancing the empathetic role as well as the administrative role as the head of the institution. And you can understand that, as an administrator, one is expected to ensure minimum disruption to academic calendar, but there is also the need to listen to mental health needs of students, staff, and faculty. There are many students who want to keep moving, while there are some for whom the pandemic impact is destroying their lives with infections, death, and economic drain. We are realizing that the dynamic nature of the pandemic requires us to be flexible and adaptive in our approach. It is important to make short-term plans and to be ready to change plans to suit the changing epidemiological graph of the virus. When we thought we should start making plans to open up the campus from the next academic year, we are faced now with the COVID 2.0 surging around us. So it's been a very challenging time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bharat, for sharing that. And we hope that this too shall pass. And the next time we have a panel discussion, it'll be a very different set of questions that I'll be posing to you. Dr. Arora, the universities you lead, as you mentioned early on, focus on educating Indian youth from underserved sections of society. And as a champion for education for women and girls, you have at different events and platforms and in your writings talked about 4 factors that can have a huge impact for enrollment of girls in the education system, namely security, scholarships, flexibility, and mobility. Could you please elaborate on these?
Certainly, Shobna, thank you so much. I would maybe just start by saying what would lack of these 4 factors, lead to if you don't have these. So let's say in our experience, because our whole model was around, getting the girls out, because at the time we started, the gross enrollment ratio, if you looked at through the gender lens, was very, very low. So we used scholarships as a tool to draw out the girls. And it was not often the girls' decision to come and study when we gave the scholarship. It was the decision of the parents, because normally you have that much money, and that much money you prioritize on the son's education, on the son's skilling, because he's seen as the economic asset. But when you gave the scholarship, if you didn't give the scholarship, the money would go to the girl's education, and she wouldn't probably proceed to that higher education level, or not even to the school level of O levels or A levels, and maybe just be out at the 8th standard. So scholarship at every level, not just the higher education level. So progressively, although we were able to reach the minimum 12th standard eligibility, even for them, to go to college or not to go to college. That is the question, and that gets answered with that scholarship. And you say, don't worry, we'll take care of the tuition, we'll take care of the boarding, we'll take care of the lodging. So, she's there, she will learn English, she will learn these skills, she will be ready to get a job, which will, she'll get an employment, so all those things. And when actually she does get the employment, and she, instead of being the economic liability in the heads of the family and the societal mindset, she becomes this economic asset. And a very fond memory of mine is when this girl with her first salary bought 2 plane tickets for her parents to take them on their first plane ride. I mean, there are so many touching moments like that. Just today, I was reading about a young boy who was working with the Amul dairy. He was the son of the chauffeur, but got opportunities through scholarships to study in a school, to study, and now he's excelled in IIM Ahmedabad, and he's joining that same company again as a top-notch manager. So it truly has a magical effect. So if you don't give that, I mean, my first travel abroad was on a scholarship. As a student, you don't really have any economic means. So the first time I went out, and not only does it, I can't say too much about what it does to you when you step into the world of education, and you go to a university somewhere away from your town, in a bigger city, in a different country. It just opens up your mind and gives you a vision who you can be. The same thing for security. I mean, again, in the rural context, if you don't have security, even in the urban context, we deter. We have rules for girls saying don't go out when it's late and things like that. Because if you don't, and that's a function of the state to ensure the law and order. So that security for us as universities to be able to work to ensure that the road is well done. And I remember very fondly, I was working with a lady who is in Gujarat, and I told her that we need to widen the road because we need to put the lights over there as well, because it's dark otherwise. And she got it done within the week. So working with a woman chief minister who understood exactly what I was talking about, it didn't take delay. So that was fantastic, because it does a huge difference to your sense. If you're in a state of fear, you can't fight. So those basics need to be figured out. Mobility, again, I always like to present gifts as shoes to girls, because I feel your feet and you're wearing shoes. The other day, I have domestic staff, and she told me it felt like I reached home early. So it's sort of put wheels on you. You feel you can, and you go for it. There's been an experiment of giving bicycles to girls in villages, and they're ready to get going. So it builds the confidence and solves that problem of security. Because you have mobility, you can get onto that bicycle, go to your school. You don't have to that many kilometers to that school or college, which is far away. I'm strictly of rural regions because my universities are actually situated and built in the rural region of the state. And flexibility, because you really work, said in India, we'll coexist with different centuries. So you are coexisting with different mindsets. And it's very important to take them together and respect those differences and be flexible to understand and not sort of fight it with confrontation all the time, but accept, adjust, embrace, adapt to it. Because you may have, through affirmative action or through scholarships, you may be able to do something in the life of that subject. But when that subject goes back to their context, to their village, to their family, if you haven't taken the ecosystem along, she's unable to sustain the many gains made at this institution. So for the gains to be sustainable, the ecosystem of the family and the society and the village also needs to be respected and taken along with, so that somebody was sharing, I don't know how much true it is, about the case in Rwanda. Of course, they had a very, I'm sorry if I'm taking more time. Maybe I can jump back to it on another answer. I don't want to take away time from the others, but I think I made my point.
Thank you so much, Dr. Arora. I think a lot of what you said would resonate with our global audience. And I think the one big takeaway from what you just shared is how we need to take the ecosystem along with the student that we're trying to transform through the education experience. Thank you for that. Dr. Siddell, Like you, I love music and I am crazy about jazz. So apart from being a university president, you are a talented artist with a passion for music, and you have contributed immensely to this landscape. How has creativity helped you and guided your decision making, especially at Emily Carr, as you navigate this pandemic?
Well, thank you for that question. One of the presidents of another Canadian university, quite a seasoned president, said, once we were well into the pandemic, that we are all new presidents in the context of the pandemic, and we're all navigating a very different kind of landscape, and I think that has really caused us all to think about university leadership. In terms of being a musician, I would like to think that what I bring to the role of president is an awareness of the importance of the ensemble, of working together, relying on each other's talents and skills, and recognizing that the collective effort exceeds the performance of any single individual. That is an approach I try to take with my own leadership team, and an approach I try to take with our entire university community, although that is more difficult. And I'm always thinking about that and ways to do that. I've also been thinking a lot for a number of years about the notion of leadership in the context of the work that so many of us are doing in universities right now to decolonize our curricula, our pedagogical approaches, our governance systems and decision-making processes, thinking about, what does organizational structure and what does leadership look like in an institution that is moving away from Western modes of thinking and doing that have dominated many universities for a very long time. And while we were doing this work prior to the pandemic, I think it is impossible to talk about leadership during the pandemic without talking about decolonizing and indigenizing and anti-racist work. There has been a growing and profound awareness of anti-Black racism and anti-Asian racism during the pandemic, as well as a heightened awareness of social injustice made evident by the very unequal ways in which the pandemic has been experienced. Conversations about this have been a significant focus at Canadian universities and in universities across the globe. Our students in particular are exhorting us to see the need for change as urgent. Change to our curriculum that reflects much more diverse bodies of knowledge and methodological approaches, and to addressing racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, and ableism, so that our students do not continue to be subject to discrimination and harassment at our campuses. So what does leadership look like in that context? We're still figuring that out, but I think it means changing the way we listen to each other, which takes us back to music. Playing in an ensemble, particularly doing improvisation, requires listening to each other and building on what each other is doing, and really producing things that could not be produced otherwise. Universities, in my opinion, are not especially well set up to do that. And so we have to be very intentional in finding ways to do that. How do you bring an ensemble ethos to university work that gives all members of the community, faculty, staff, students, administration, the board, the Senate, alumni, a voice that is heard and thereby contributes to the work of the university and the very identity of the university? There's been some interesting work done on improvisation as social practice and the ways in which thinking about improvisation in those ways can be a model for doing work differently. And I think it's really interesting to think about that in the context of universities. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Sidol. I love the ensemble ethos. I think, it's just such a beautiful concept, and I'm sure that there's lots to think about and learn from what you just shared. I want to move on talking about new presidents and how everyone in the pandemic is almost like a new president, to my own president, Dr. Johnson. After a distinguished career in academics and research, you became SFU's president right in the middle of a pandemic. Could you share with us what that really meant for you, especially in the early days of your presidency, and how are you choosing to lead during these difficult times?
Well, thank you so much, Shobana. Yes, indeed. I started as president last September, and we were in the midst of a pandemic. When I put my hand up to be considered for president at SFU, I had no idea these would be the circumstances we'd be facing. But in terms of how I've approached it, I really have enjoyed the comments from the panelists and what Dr. Barat said about leading with compassion, but also trying to think about the administrative requirements of the university. I think that balance is always something that we as presidents are thinking about. But let me begin by saying, and I have said this to our community, that first and foremost, we have to be considering the safety of our faculty, staff, and students. That really has to be at the heart of all of our decision making, and I think that's a kind of the North Star that we need to make sure that we're considering with all of our decisions. I think it's really important to be very compassionate and be a compassionate leader during these times, to be concerned about, as we've heard, about the mental health and well-being of our students, but also our faculty and staff. Considerable hardship is being experienced. And to Gillian's point, to be a listening president. I think we all recognize that during the pandemic, that inequalities and equities have surfaced in a way, and tensions have surfaced in a way that have not been experienced in the past. These issues have been long with us, issues, as we've heard about, of racism, of inequality, but it's a time to listen and to pay attention and to think about ways that we can develop systems that are going to be more responsive into the future. I have to say, and this is, one of the upsides of the pandemic for me, is that because I'm not traveling abroad, visiting partners around the world, or I've been very focused on our community. And I think that's been an advantage. It's been an advantage to really be at home. Most of our meetings are on Zoom, obviously, or virtually, but to really be paying attention. I guess the other thing for me in terms of leadership is I'm very interested in inclusive leadership as well, about, making sure that that I am open to diverse positions, that I am listening to different points of view, and bringing those points of view into decision-making of the university. And I think we've made considerable progress in that regard as well. We at SFU look forward to opening our doors more fully to students this fall, and are making plans to be more fully back on campus in September. But I have to tell you, it's not without challenges. I've heard from many that shutting our doors and going online is way easier than bringing people back and making them feel safe and secure as we return to on-campus activities. So the work has been immense, but I have to say it's been so fulfilling. Every day I'm very, very grateful for the hard work of our faculty and staff, and really the incredible resiliency of our students. So it's been quite a journey, but it really has been an incredible privilege, I have to say. So I'll leave it there for now, Shobana.
Thank you so much, Dr. Johnson. Having the pleasure of working with you, I have firsthand experienced your, empathy, compassionate leadership, and how we've had to really change the way we think about problems and how we collaborate with students, faculty, staff, and communities to find some solutions. So thank you for that. I'm going to ask Dr. McLean about how we have gone about prioritizing and reprioritizing institutional goals. So Dr. McLean, when the pandemic started, as a university president, I'm sure you had to do some serious prioritizing and reprioritizing of your university's goals to make sure that the outcomes that you would like your domestic and international students to have are achieved. Could you share some thoughts on that?
Yes, thank you. And it's a really good question, and I'll try to add a little bit to what my colleague said, because the pandemic has actually really substantially shifted our thinking, much more specifically about everyone. And I mean our students, our staff and faculty, all community members who are part of our university activity or walk onto our campus, focusing on their safety, their health and well-being. And of course, we've always been concerned about the well-being of our people. The university is its people. But the pandemic has required, I think, a different lens and set of skills compared to before, the penultimate goal. And so the reprioritization of goals has really become this: how do we support the university community, our students and their challenges that have been described, our faculty and enormous challenges related to the pandemic. How do we become an institution that is enabling remote teaching and learning, research, experiential learning, community engagement, remote work? How is it that we're going to enable members of the university to continue on with the mission of our institution, but to do it in a completely different way? And when I look back, I think what an absolutely daunting challenge it has been, and how well higher education institutions, I think, around the world have done in continuing on with the mission. How do we, create those opportunities for engagement in the world of the university when so much of what we've done and how we value doing it in terms of face-to-face engagement of people is so heavily restricted? And I think the first order of business for me was in prioritizing supports for everyone, keeping our executive team and communication channels and our board and Senate engaged and in the loop and a part of things, while also at the same time trying to plan somewhat for what comes next, for opportunities that we might engage, for innovation and strategy around change and growth and delivering our mission. And a few years ago, we gave an honorary degree to a young woman who from our community by the name of Sophie Schmidt. And Sophie is a star soccer player, plays for Canada's national team, and she's a professional player in Europe. And as part of the celebration, she spoke to hundreds of kids, literally hundreds of kids on our campus. We bussed in children from all over. And one of her really specific messages was around embracing change for a future. And of course, this was pre-pandemic. But she said to them, we all have to learn to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And so many times over the last year and a half, I have thought about this. And I have tried to engage in the listening that Joy spoke to, in the creation of teamwork and engagement of everyone, that Jill has spoken to, and others, in learning to prioritize, to reprioritize, to change, and to build as we go in a really an unknown environment that we've all faced. That one day we're thinking one thing and the next day we're thinking something else. And that's very challenging for us and for everyone in our community. And I fully understand that. So I'll leave it at that and not take up too much time, but I think that we all have been required to change priorities, to refocus goals, to reprioritize on the fly, and that the resiliency that we've shown to face and engage change, I think, has been remarkable.
Wow. Thank you so much, Dr. McLean. I have been just monitoring the questions that are already starting to come in from our global audience, and believe it or not, they're fantastic questions. So I'm going to request all the panelists to give me a 30-second response to the next round of panel questions, and then we're going to jump right into the Q&A session. Dr. Bharat, starting off with you, what would you say is the role of institutes of higher learning in the COVID context? And if you could just touch on the specific role played by TISS in supporting the fight against COVID in India.
Thank you, Sobna. This is a great question, actually. And I would say that higher education institutions have an extremely critical role to play in times of disasters, such as this particular pandemic, as they are at the forefront of cutting-edge research, generating critical data, developing technical, clinical, and social innovations. They all have the necessary expertise and professional skills for community-level work, and also for providing inputs on policy and programs to support government response. So I guess all leading institutions, even smaller colleges and all have a great deal of, contribution to make. Now, with the Tata Institute of Social Sciences, as I said, we are a community engaged and connected university. We are already engaged with many communities through our field action projects, which I said about in my introduction, which makes it possible for us actually to move in the field very fast and very quickly. And you would know, Sobhna, about those. Their professionally trained field staff have the required skills to work at grassroots level. And so no time actually is lost on trainings, etc. And usually, but of course, we have to orient them to a particular pandemic or to a particular disaster, but the basics are all there. And because we constantly partner with several key government departments, many of our faculty get inducted into various committees and task forces set up by the government. Now, in this particular pandemic, we did many things. For example, there were some direct interventions through our field action projects. We actually, were running community kitchens for some time in informal settlements. We were in the forefront of distribution of food packets to migrants. As you all must have seen, they were walking, they were traveling back to their hometowns, and many had become homeless. We did fundraising and financial aid to unemployed people, widows, and street dwellers. Communication materials, especially like small video clips for awareness generation in local languages, because a lot of people had lots of misconceptions and we needed to clear all those. And of course, we did large surveys and other researches because we are also a research university. But I'd just like to take a moment to highlight a couple of 4 initiatives or 4 or 5 initiatives, which are, I think, particularly interesting to look at. One thing which we did a lot, it was in the mental health sphere. We have a COVID dedicated free telephone based helpline known as the iCall in multiple Indian languages. So it's not just 1 or 2 languages, in multiple state languages. And these are all by professionally trained counselors for the general public. And we also had a special dedicated helpline for frontline health workers, because we realized that a lot of health workers were beginning to just drain out. They had their own concerns, they had their own anxieties, and nobody was looking at their mental health needs. So we actually have still a special dedicated helpline for the frontline health workers, the nurses, the doctors, the sanitation workers, the police people, and so on. We have a very interesting, field action project called Rahbar, which has been supporting 3 national level and 3 state level helplines, 12 organizations, and over 300 plus professionals across India and outside, in Nepal, Australia, Indonesia, by providing training and supervision sessions for mental health professionals working with individuals and communities. And we did a lot of capacity building initiatives. And through this, we have reached out to more than 6,000 leaders, teachers, counselors, special educators across 25 states and 4 union territories, hundreds of cities, districts, and towns in India and other countries such as Qatar, UAE, Kuwait, Nepal, Australia, Indonesia. And the capacity building initiatives have been conducted in multiple languages, English, Hindi, and a few Indian languages. Third thing we did was we developed a whole lot of guidance documents for the Indian Council of Medical Research on psychosocial counseling for COVID-19 positive patients and their family members. And we did a psychosocial support during the COVID-19 pandemic, a training manual also for counselors for the National Disaster Management Authority. A very interesting thing that one of our field action projects called Prayas did was to have, they did a lot of advocacy work around prisons and prisoners, and they had prisons being decongested to prevent COVID infection within the prisons. And the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Government of India, has now issued a standard operating procedure for ensuring vaccination of prisoners and inmates of shelter homes, beggars' homes, etc., even in the absence of any ID proof, documents, or mobile number, because some of them don't have those, and that was coming in the way of vaccinating them. Another, field action project that is the Special Cell for Women developed the hashtag lockdown on domestic violence, an initiative in collaboration with an NGO and support from the government of Maharashtra, the state in which we are, and also the Maharashtra police, to address the issue of rising domestic violence due to COVID pandemic during, the last phase. And of course, it continues even today. So it served a huge need emerging among women who were forced to be homebound with violence perpetrators such as spouse and in-laws, etc. So these are a couple of initiatives. There are many because we have, as I said, 18 initiatives, field action projects, and every field action project has its own community, and we have been working very actively during this pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Bharat. I think, all over the world, many individuals are very, very concerned about what's happening in India and the devastating effects of the pandemic in wave 2. So I think the information that you've provided, gives a sense of all the efforts that are being done, not only by TISs, but perhaps lots of other institutions to make sure that people are supported and the safety net stays somewhat intact. So thank you for that. I am very conscious that we need to wrap this session up by 9 o'clock, and we have a global audience. We have some fantastic questions that have come in from different parts of the world. So I'm just going to make sure that we address at least some of those questions. I want to ask the next question to Dr. Johnson. World over, international students and their families are very concerned about what's happening currently. How are post-secondary institutions such as SFU advocating for international students who are unable to come to Canada as planned due to pandemic restrictions?
Yeah, thanks so much, Shobana. Yeah, there is a very deep concern about international students and their ability to attend universities in Canada, but also abroad generally. We see borders closed and opportunities limited for students to actually receive student visas to come to Canada. We have been working with our federal counterparts, advocating for making sure that student visas can get processed appropriately, and there has been some very positive action in that regard. I think the other thing in British Columbia, there is a commitment to vaccinate international students when they arrive. And also at our university, we're supporting them with quarantine that's required for our students for the 2-week period. So we're trying to find ways to support them when they come into the country. But we're also recognizing that there will be some students that are unable to travel to Canada and attend our universities. We will make sure that we continue to offer some courses online. So our students who are living in other countries and can't get into Canada can complete their degrees. But, I think this is a deep concern for all of us at this time, to think about how we can support our students. The stress and strain, particularly on our international students, is quite considerable. And I think that we're doing what we can through our international student office to provide supports to them as well. Just think of the time zones they're living in. Look at us today, morning, evening, and these are the conditions that our students are studying and trying to keep up with their studies, and it is very, very challenging. So in summary, advocacy, absolutely, supports, and then putting systems on the ground that we can to support international students as they come into Canada.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Johnson. I'm sure a lot of our viewers were pleased to hear that. And thanks for all the advocacy work that all of you as leaders of educational institutions are engaged in. My next question is to Dr. Arora, and this is a question from actually one of our viewers, by which I'm signaling to all of you on our panel that we're moving into the Q&A session. We have a question from India. What does the future look like for online education? Is it here to stay? Countries like India are not too comfortable with concepts like homeschooling. What is the way forward, and how does one start to build a culture that without compromising traditional institution learning?
Thank you so much for that question. And truly, really, we did have correctly put, as not just us. I've written a book along with my partner, which was on the dawn of a new vibrant India. And we gave reforms in higher education in that book. In 2014, I had the opportunity to present in person to the Prime Minister of India when he was going to be taking over as Prime Minister. And he listened very intently to all the recommendations. And to his credit, he said, okay, send me more copies and we'll have people in the PMO go through them and read through them. So from the government side, a lot of policy push has been coming in the past 5 or 6 years, especially towards modernization. And this government is really doing a lot in terms of digitalization, ensuring access, putting in infrastructure in place. But I think it's one thing to put in policy, and it's again another thing to take the rest of the ecosystem along. It has been happening, but definitely during the pandemic, we were talking about the upside has been that everybody's sort of woken up to the fact that it's no longer an option and it's a necessity, and it's no longer an additional way to make education reach the masses, but an imperative and one of the main ways to make it happen. So it's really flipped the classroom that we wanted to flip for a very long time, and it's made it happen. So in a way, it's something we need to seize and work upon. And I don't think we will go back anymore, because the way everybody has understood the power of that smartphone, the power of that infrastructure, it's here to stay. So blended learning will be the more, we will see a lot of evolution of the roles of the teacher as the facilitator and the student as a more engaged student, a more empowered student with more exposure. But I think what we also need to do, because I did speak about flexibility and agility, and I've spoken about this on some other platforms as well, is that in our policy making, we need to also become more open about a variety of sources of knowledge, a variety of courses that the student now has access to. So the traditional academic curriculum that we refer to, or that we make as teachers or as universities, we have to completely revolutionize our understanding of what that means. Today, it's not just what I said. The student is setting her or his own curriculum with a sheer variety of content that you're consuming, some of which is great content, which is coming from unacademic sources as well, by people who are just sharing their knowledge, who are posh, who are just sharing because they're passionate about a subject. They've taken to social media and sharing about it. I think we need to figure out a mechanism to accredit some of these courses which are available online, but through non-academic, non-traditional, non-university sources, but are some very credible courses coming out, and find a way to integrate all these knowledge sources into the formal education of the traditional system, because the student is spending time already on educating herself or informing oneself through these sources. So I think to make the student divide his attention between learning that she or he enjoys and learning that you have to give your exams for. I think we need to find this blend and balance between this openness of the learning, that this immense exposure that we have. It's a great opportunity, but the traditional brick and mortar university system, which is sort of just grappling with this online thing, is sort of faced with this, but we should not turn our backs toward it. It is challenging, get this in the face, and really, as policymakers, and I notice is a very influential policymaker in the country, really take cognizance of this fact. And we at the Women's Indian Chamber of Commerce and Council, where we have women leaders from pan India, and we have had a discussion on this as well, where we want to ask the government to set into motion policy frameworks which are open, enabling, and capture all this energy of knowledge which is freely floating around, which students are tapping into, and how we as institutions can help filter out the best in it and integrate the best in it and expand the academic curricula. I remember Prime Minister Modi saying, he referred to the Rigvedic verse, which meant, let knowledge come to me from everywhere. Truly, but we as institutions have to become receptive to be able to capture all this and find ways and means, credible ways to accredit and embrace this knowledge which is coming in very flexible ways, but we can find ways to formalize it as well.
Thank you for that, Dr. Arora. My next question is to Dr. McLean. This is from one of our viewers. Thank you for this panel with all the esteemed panelists. I'm glad to hear the emphasis on mental health. I've noticed a stark increase in conflict, animosity, and some really extreme and negative behaviors in the last few months. I suspect it is a result of accumulated stress due to the pandemic. Do you have one piece of advice for female academic and leaders to support the mental health and well-being of all in our communities?
Wow, yes, that is a really good question, and I'd love to hear from everyone. One piece of advice from me, I think, would be, the importance of strong evidence-based communication, open communication, such that we are ensuring that everybody has information and, the listening that we've talked about before. I mean, I think that that there is a lot of stress. There are so many unknowns. There's so much competing information out there. The information changes so quickly, and it does lead to a very elevated sense of stress and conflict, etc. And so whatever we can do as leaders to ensure that people have information, they have regular flow of information, and that we listen to people's concerns, and we're willing to be that flexible leader to understand that not everybody is the same, and that not everyone's concerns come from the same place, and we need to take the time, I think, to unpack that, and it's very difficult to do, and but that would be my advice. That would be my approach.
Thank you so much for that. These are tough times, and I'm sure there are many individuals who are watching us today and listening to us today who are reflecting on just some of the challenges they've faced in their daily work, working remotely from home and trying to, either be instructors or, profs or administrators for that matter. So there's an interesting question here, which I think I'd love to ask Dr. Siddall to please try and answer. Is there a need to refocus attention on cultivating leadership skills in students with a larger community intervention that enables them to acquire traits early on in life that prepares them for times like we are living in today?
That's a great question. I think our students are showing us that they possess those traits already, and we can do our best to help them strengthen those traits. But I've been so impressed by how students have responded to the pandemic, as others on this panel have said, in terms of really stepping up to a very different kind of learning model. And doing so, a lot of people have said to me, how on earth did an art and design university pivot to online learning? It's so, hands-on. And it's incredible how both our faculty and our students stepped up to that in very innovative ways that actually led to kind of, very creative thinking and learning. And our students have also been a very strong voice around urging the university to address issues of equity, diversity and inclusion, anti-racism, decolonization. So they, I have no doubt that they are going to, leave us when they graduate. And we just had over 400 graduate last week, I think it was, as time all merges together, that they will be leaving us with incredible skills and commitments to social justice, to environmental justice, and to really innovative and exciting work.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Siddall. Dr. Johnson, I would love for you to answer this question from one of our global viewers. What will be the essential steps to overcome educational institutional challenges that institutions are facing right now globally. Could you share some insights, some advice, some thoughts on this?
Well, the challenges are many, and I can't pretend to know what every challenge that every university is facing right now. But I think, first of all, the challenges, and we've talked about many of them, relate to the pandemic. So that's, first and foremost on all of our minds. And I think that and again, the safety of our faculty, staff, and students, thinking about how we might reopen, what that might look like. I think the next challenge, and I really liked Dr. Aurora's point on this, is thinking about how we can pivot to a new way of learning, how we can incorporate lessons from the pandemic into our institutional pedagogies, how we can, continue to evolve as institutions. A third challenge that I'm really interested in is the role of post-secondary institutions in economic recovery for our countries. I do think that universities play a critical role in working with governments locally, nationally, around economic recovery, not only in filling the skills gap, but also in terms of partnering to address issues and layering on those concerns that Dr. Siddell talked about around equity, thinking about the ways that we can build back better, in the phrase of the day. And I think, there are other, on top of all of those other challenges, I think every institution is wringing their hands a little bit around their budgets. I think everyone around this table can nod and say, yes, we're concerned about our budgets, and we need our governments to support our institutions because they are just such a critical part of society. Our societies will not be able to kind of move forward without strong support of post-secondary institutions. So those are just a few. I could go on, and there might be others that other institutions globally are facing. I certainly recognize that, but those are top of mind for me right now. You're muted, Shobana. That's the phrase of the day.
Yes, that's the phrase of the day. I was trying to thank everyone in the chat box for just the wonderful comments. And I know as panelists, we're sort of paying attention to what's happening on the screen, but people have been saying that they so appreciate your insights, your sharing, and the work that you're all putting in. So I've conveyed my appreciation on all of our behalf. The next question is around students who are differently abled or who have academic challenges, learning challenges, or other challenges. And the question that's being asked is, during this pandemic, what have we learned about being more inclusive to students who have different barriers or challenges? And how can educational institutions be more inclusive and responsive to their needs? And I'm wondering if Dr. Bharat could respond to that question.
I think it's a very student-centric question, and I really like it because all of our universities, I think, have a very diverse kind of a student body, and we need to really acknowledge it. The pandemic actually has told us much more about, going beyond the economic and the social, kind of dimensions of inequalities to also, look at how children and how young people have to learn within homes which are so crowded, which do not have the kind of ecosystem. And what was very humbling and sobering to hear from some students was, and it really disturbed me for some time, is that many of them were looking forward to being in hostels and first time have a kind of a room of their own or a kind of a corner of their own, rather than share that space with so many people at home. And they were looking forward to being with peer group and entirely with their peer group, and that hasn't happened. And I think, to say that, and that yet we must go on, like the show must go on and, complete our academic year has been really challenging. And I must say that, we are looking at our budgets, we are looking at all our opportunities at completing and the academic year, because we also believe that it should not be that, we are left with a whole lot of young people who have not earned their degrees in the year. That's something which I think all of us as university leaders have been very concerned about. But at the same time, we have to be balancing this whole thing. So when you talk about how we've been looking at making education accessible is by we've tried to provide laptops with students who did not have laptops. We actually couriered laptops to students who have been living in very remote corners. We have given them also provided them economic some small funding to buy data packs. We actually helped some students move into their relatives' homes if they were living in urban areas and had power outages in rural areas. We supported them with that. We have been a little flexible also with the fee payment schedules and and all those kind of things like late fee payment or repeat semesters have gone out of our vocabulary. We have been trying to be very gentle and generous with our students, but at the same time keeping an eye on quality education, because that's something which we cannot overlook. So it's been a challenge, but the pandemic has told us about many other forms of barriers which we didn't think were there, and we have tried to think out of the box solutions for many of these challenges to make our libraries. Of course, we had e-resources, and so we depended on that. We're trying to give students a lot of group exercises, lots of not loading them with a lot of reading material to make their lives very miserable while they are sometimes navigating with a mobile phone and such devices. So we've learned a lot, and I think students have, as all of you have said, that shown a lot of resilience, and we are trying to help individual students with their problems as well.
Thank you for that, Dr. Bharat. I think one of the important points that you had in there is that the pandemic has just shown us the wide range of barriers and inequities and difficulties students face, and I'm sure faculty and staff too. There's a great question from one of our viewers, and I would love for Dr. Sidal to respond to this. The student has changed in our environment. Our students are carers and mothers, and are also joining, to take up education later in life. How do we best support these students and faculty when they have so many competing priorities in life?
That's a really good question. I think the pandemic has shown us one way we can do that, and that is by offering more online delivery of curriculum. We're hearing from students that many students have welcomed that because of the flexibility it brings to their schedules. Many students who attend Emily Carr, for example, have quite a long commute to get to campus. And so post-pandemic, we'll definitely be looking at some kind of blending of delivery of curriculum so that those students can continue to have that kind of flexibility in their schedules. I think other ways of doing that, we don't have this available at Emily Carr, but other institutions I've been at have childcare available, which I think can be incredibly helpful to students who are balancing caring for children while also being students. I think just being attentive to what our students are telling us about the kind of challenges that they're facing when they've got a lot going on. I think really, supports that are available for them. For our Aboriginal students, our Aboriginal gathering place has continued to be active throughout the pandemic, which has been kind of amazing, and sending out kits to our Aboriginal students with materials like beads and fur and so on, so that they can continue engaging in traditional material practices, which they would normally have been doing on campus. And I think that's a tremendously helpful thing to our Aboriginal students, many of whom are mature students and who are balancing a lot of different things in their lives.
Thank you. And I think many of you have touched on the need for empathetic and compassionate leadership and to pay attention to what has surfaced during the pandemic in terms of issues, inequities, be it tech divide or, access to education or mental health. And I think this conversation has just helped us realize that even when the pandemic is over and done with, we are going to definitely have to pay attention to these important lessons. We have some very interesting questions about sort of, some sort of predictability sort of about the future. I'm going to combine a couple of questions here. So I would love for Dr. McLean to respond to this. One of the university presidents have asked, do you think it's necessary to add or include mental and stress relieving courses in post-secondary education? And another question that has come from one of the private sector participants is, what about micro-credentials and new ways of educating individuals to fill the gaps that many sectors are beginning to find?
Yeah, good questions. And I think that, the future of higher education and the change that is on our horizon from a variety of different, sources will lead us to, yes, looking at what we do and how we do it. And I think that that it could be different in different communities. It could be different for different institutions, and that filling that need, for your own community and understanding the needs of the students that are congregating or gathering at our university has been a high priority for us to understand, our local needs and issues. And I would think that that's, so each institution is a little bit different. And I think assessing, your own community and their needs is critically important. And sometimes we're not as good at doing that as we need to be in that listening component. I do think that there are opportunities for different delivery, and micro-credentials as being this stacking of smaller or shorter courses that then can lead to other things. I think that there likely is real opportunity there in terms of looking at learning across the lifespan, and that we're always going to be learning going forward, that it's not a matter of engaging, ticking the box of getting that degree and moving on to the next thing, that the pace of change from all of the different sources in our world now will just continue. And therefore, the notion that universities can be places across the lifespan for learners, not just for young people, but for everyone. And that learning happens everywhere and can happen everywhere. And that micro-credentialing or other forms of short courses that stack and that ladder into other things, and that are not isolated and then become obsolete, I think is a challenge for institutions to consider right now. Yes.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. McLean. Based on how engaged all five of you have been and your thoughtful reflections and very candid comments, engagement from our global audience, we could have gone on for another hour, believe me. But unfortunately, we have to basically start wrapping up this event. And so I'm going to request each of you, starting with Dr. Arora, to take a quick minute to share some closing comments and thoughts.
Thank you so much, and wonderful. Such a great learning experience, learn from each and every one on this. Shobana, thank you for doing a great job of integrating. I think Dr. Joy mentioned about how we really need to work with the governments, not just in terms of policy making, of course, which is very important. It's integral. It's how we implement whatever we envision, but to really get engaged into the economic part of the country, of the nation, of which the post-secondary education is a part. I think that's a gap that we need to fulfill as universities. And I know that in our country, our Prime Minister has very keenly spoken about this at a Vice Chancellor's conference. He told us that you should be the think tanks for the government in setting the next level of policy. But I think we need to rise to the occasion and take that as give that power to ourselves, reclaim that power, and get talking to the government about a lot of these things. What our experience has been at the Women's Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, where we have a group of, in one of the councils, leaders from various post-secondary educations, women leaders who come together, is that whenever you actually go and ask the government for something, and you've thought through it with panels like these, with leaders like these, you get what you ask for. There's nobody trying to resist and slow you down or not give you what you want. You come with thought through ideas, you come with necessary inclusions that need to be done. It's trying to reclaim that power as institutions, but we can only if we come together, not as a singular institution, as one university, but as a group of universities in each of our countries. But now we also have a global group for it. We call it the G100. And, I'd really love some of you to look at it. It's on our website. The G100 is a global group of 100 women leaders working together on 100 different sectors with multilateral institutions, the UN, country governments, to be able to have a top-down level of policy, a think tank approach over a range of issues. And I think as women, when we come together as women leaders, we have the power together, the power of our institutions together, the power of our experiences together, and really move and shake move the needle, move that mountain of change and transformation, which sometimes is difficult to do alone. I always say, alone we strive, together we thrive. So I think we really need to come together and engage much more with government bodies, engage much more with banks, with I'm an entrepreneurship evangelist. Even with my students, I always tell them, be job creators and not job seekers, especially in a country like India with such a large population. We really need a lot of micro, small and medium enterprises who can employ people, and that is really the way out of the unemployment situation. And so we really need to talk to the banks, we need to talk to the government, and we need to create a lot more communities of support for young students and for young women especially, who face additional kind of layers of barriers. Like Dr. Shalini said, we've discovered the kind of barriers that women additionally face as well. So tap into the power of community and tap into the ecosystem of art and talk to them and make the changes by coming together collectively as a community of stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Arora, and thank you for being here. Dr. Siddal.
Thank you so much. This has been an amazing conversation, and I'm really grateful to have been part of it. I think what I would want to say in closing is that I think it's a very exciting time for universities. I think the pandemic has really highlighted just how important universities are to our society, to our economy, and to in terms of research and also in terms of our students and who graduates from our universities. And going back to the question I was addressing earlier around leadership skills in students, I think critical thinking skills are emerging as one of the most important things that we can provide for our students. And I think that is a kind of learning that does really hone leadership skills. And so I hope that, they're often referred to as soft skills, and I would love to see us move away from that terminology. There's nothing soft about critical thinking and really strong communication skills that can go along with that. And just having a mind, a kind of critical mind, and a mind interested in asking good questions and looking looking for answers to those questions. And that's really what we want to foster in our students. I think I would also say, given that this is a panel about women in leadership, that we need to be mindful that there's work to be done there. And, you know, it's fantastic to have these university presidents together here today, but we know that in Canada, I think it's still only around 25% of presidents of universities are women, and most of those are at smaller universities. So Joy is one of the exceptions, leading a larger university. So there's much work to be done there, and we're talking about that and working on that. And within Universities Canada, the women presidents come together and are addressing those issues. And I think we can do our part by mentoring women as they're coming through the university system.
Thank you for that, Dr. Sadal. I appreciate it. Dr. McLean.
Yes, thank you. I agree with what my colleagues have said, every word of it. And I guess in closing, I would make a comment to women students, to women, younger women in the academy who are interested in positions in the president's office or beyond, across the institution, is to take heart in their absolute suitability for these jobs, their abilities to do these jobs, to be willing to step forward, as Joyce said, put up your hand and engage in leadership. And it's a bit trite perhaps, but I really do believe in the say yes to things, engage in all that you can to gain experience, to gain connections. Do not hesitate to step forward and to be a part of the leadership that our communities, our world so desperately needs. We're in a tough time now. The pandemic has been a desperate scenario for our world, but it is maybe for now and not forever. I keep saying that, and it carries on, it continues on. But I would just simply urge everyone to consider their opportunities to be engaged, to gain experience, to say yes to opportunities, and not to hesitate to step into leadership roles.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Dr. Bharat, and we'll conclude with Dr. Johnson.
It's been such an amazing conversation with all of you, and I endorse all the sentiments and all that you all have said. In my closing remarks, I would only like to say, first of all, just I'm sort of being so engaged with this pandemic that I want to say that the pandemic is so global. It's a global cause and a global goal for all of us, and I think partnerships and collaborations are so very key to overcoming this all. So as they say, we are all not good until every one of us is good, and healthy in this out of this pandemic. And the second thing I would like to say is that we all have realized that mental health is such an important issue for all our staff, faculty, students, and when we take care of this, we really make them resilient and we make them capable of taking on any challenges. So I'd like to say that we really learn. We must learn to listen to all types of voices, be very inclusive, and I think be gentler and on all of us, including us as individuals, and on our students and the faculty and staff, the kind of demands we sometimes put. We need to be really gentler and take mental health issues very, very critically. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity, really.
Thank you for those very, very important reflections, Dr. Joy Johnson.
Thank you. I know we're coming up to the top of the hour, and I just want to say in closing what a pleasure it's been. I just also again want to reiterate that our concern is with our colleagues in India at this time. In terms of leadership, I totally agree that the work of women in leadership is not done. We all have to lean in hard. When I was a young woman finishing high school, it wasn't on my list of dreams to be a university president. But it is about saying yes to opportunities. But I will also, in closing, say The global pandemic has taught us that we are interconnected, that we rely on one another, and we need to work together. So Dr. Bharat, I totally agree. Partnership is key, and it's just been a pleasure to be part of this panel today.
Thank you very much, everyone. It's been an immense pleasure. Take care, and I'm handing it off to my friend and MC, Nargis.
Hello. Thank you so much, Shobna. Wow, that was amazing. And thank you to all our panelists for the amazing conversation. Thank you to all of you for participating and to our extraordinary 22 questions we had. I did ask the technical staff to save the questions and send them to Shobna, so they're going to do that. I also want to invite you to continue the conversation on LinkedIn, online, on social media. Almost all of our speakers are on LinkedIn. Please go ahead and connect with them, follow them. Let's keep the conversation going. Shobna and I will also do LinkedIn posts after the event and tag the speakers on LinkedIn, so you'll see and you'll be able to engage through our posts too. I want to thank you also for all of your patience through all the Zoom freezes, delays, muted microphones, all the things we all have to go through every day. We appreciate you. And I want to thank my friend Shobna, who did so much work putting this together with the organizing committee. Colin, Vivek, we appreciate you. Thank you so much. Round of applause for all the hard work, the hundreds of emails that go in that no one ever sees, right? That go into an event like this. I want to take a moment to say that we know India is going through so much right now. And we know you want to help. So Shobna and I put together a finishing slide that will come up, a thank you slide, after Hema says a few words. And it will have the names of 2 organizations that you can help support. So take a screenshot of that slide when it comes up. And we will also mention the organizations again when we do the wrap-up LinkedIn post sometime next week. So I wanted you all to know that. We were mindful of that, Shobna and I, and we thought about that. Now, it gives me great pleasure to invite Hema Bhatt to the stage, the virtual stage. She is an extraordinary businesswoman, and she's the Vice President of the Board of Directors for the BC India Business Network. Hema will close out our event. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Nargis. Thank you for the kind words. On behalf of BCIBN and BCCIE, it is my pleasure to propose a vote of thanks. We are so grateful and would like to acknowledge our partners, Air Canada, YVR, and ICICI Bank. I would like to extend a big thank you to our incredible panelists and their institutions for the engaging discussions and for leading the way. Our lovely MC Nargis and our amazing moderator, Shobna, our Vice President, Vivek Saukur, and Colin Dewar. Thank you for taking the time and the effort to put up such an exceptional event. We would also like to thank and acknowledge the contributions of our amazing tech support, the SFU team, and without whom this event would not have been possible. And to our global media partner, Mr. Munish Gupta of BIO TV for live streaming this event. Good night, India, and have a wonderful day, Canada. Thank you and stay well.